unveiled campaign ad, the Democratic National Committee is going after third-party candidate Jill Stein. In the 30-second ad titled "The Company They Keep," the DNC lumps Stein in with former KKK leader David Duke and links her to Trump, his former lawyer Jay Sekulow, and other MAGA allies, as well as Russian President Vladimir Putin. Let's watch.
You can tell a lot about a person by the company they keep. Like Jill Stein. Stein isn't sorry about swinging the 2016 election to Trump, and now she's being helped by MAGA allies and Trump's former lawyer. Longtime Klan leader David Duke endorsed her. And like Trump, she's cozied up to Vladimir Putin. Jill Stein, look at her friends, because a vote for Stein is a vote for Trump. Just ask Putin.
Jill Stein, I like her very much.
The ad comes after Duke endorsed Stein last week, and he said he carefully considered the decision, saying it was the most important statement he's ever made politically. Stein, of course, disavowed Duke's support. In a statement about the ad, DNC senior advisor Mary Beth Cahill wrote, "Jill Stein, David Duke, and Vladimir Putin may make odd bedfellows, but they all have one common goal: to beat Vice President Harris and put Donald Trump back in the White House. We all know Stein helped hand Trump the White House in 2016. She had no regrets, and she wants to do it again." Kamala Harris seems scared, as I pointed out on X, and I wrote, quote, "Spending money on this 2 weeks out indicates the campaign has deep concerns about retaining the progressive Dem base. If that's true in Wisconsin, the problem is likely even deeper in Michigan."
This is not the first ad the DNC released targeting Stein. Just 14 days ago, they published an ad doubling down on the claim that Trump allies are helping her derail the Harris campaign. Here's that ad. Let's watch.
Jill Stein, Green Party candidate for president. So why are Trump's close allies helping her? Stein was key to Trump's 2016 wins in battleground states. She's not sorry she helped Trump win. That's why a vote for Stein is really a vote for Trump.
Jill Stein, I like her very much. You know why? She takes 100% from them.
Stein was somewhat of a spoiler in 2016, pulling in 132,000 votes in 3 key states: Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and we know how close that was in 2016. This cycle, she could throw a wrench into the works too. National polling places her at 1%, which could be more than enough to make a difference. According to the latest Suffolk University poll, the race is essentially deadlocked in a 5-way ballot among likely voters. Harris is polling at 45%, Trump at 44%, Cornel West, Stein, and Chase Oliver hovering at 1% each. Stein is on the ballot in almost every state that matters, and she has already said she ain't going anywhere. Well, I know that the DNC started this group in March to address third-party candidates, knowing that there was an issue in 2016 with these battleground states, and how, you know, folks on the left can sometimes act out. I understand the sentiment in many of their reasonings, and especially with Gaza right now, I think folks are rightfully very concerned and frustrated. But math is math, and I worry that while you may not have everything with the Kamala Harris administration, she is an extension of the Biden administration. I understand. She's not in the room making decisions. You know, she's not the commander-in-chief. With that being said, the difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris when it comes to Gaza is stark. I mean, Donald Trump was instituted the Muslim ban. Donald Trump's family has discussed developments in Gaza. They have openly been incredibly pro-AIPAC and pro-Netanyahu, whereas the Biden-Harris administration, yes, they continue to fund Israel's arms, although they may not if Israel does not provide humanitarian aid. They are still challenging Netanyahu's policies. But Jill Stein, on the other hand, has no record with the Green Movement. She has been called out by nearly every environmental activist, including Bill McKibben. She has been called out by her own kids to not run for office. I mean, this is something that should be concerning, and the DNC has every right to put out ads against folks that stand in the way of winning an election.
They certainly have the right to do it. I guess the question is if it's a wise strategy 2 weeks out from the election where you have this sort of lingering uncommitted vote, particularly in states like Michigan and Wisconsin, right? I mean, I can't imagine that those people who are upset with the administration's policy on Israel are going to feel warm and fuzzy all of a sudden because they've lumped Jill Stein in with David Duke. If anything, that would make me less likely to vote for Kamala, because I feel like they're trying to assassinate the character of a candidate that I like and who supports my policy on the Israel-Gaza war. And Kamala has said repeatedly that she was the last person in the room with Joe Biden in all of the major decisions of this administration, and has also said publicly that she is going to continue Biden's policy on Israel, which they might have been paying lip service to the idea that they don't like what Netanyahu's doing, but they continue to fund him, they continue to send him weapons. They haven't really imposed any consequences for what they say is this awful behavior. They haven't called it a genocide, and we've seen some progressive members of the progressive Democratic base responding to phone bankers saying, well, until there's an arms embargo, then I'm not voting for you. And the phone banker argues back and tells them that a vote for Jill Stein is a vote for Trump. And maybe that's true, but I also think it's a little bit arrogant to assume, for Kamala to assume and for Hillary Clinton to have assumed in 2016, that all of the people who voted for Jill Stein would have voted for her, because it would essentially require that entire 1% that voted for Jill Stein to go to these candidates for it to change the outcome of the election in those states. We know that third-party candidates are not that cut and dry, right? Sometimes they don't vote at all. Sometimes they go for the candidate that you wouldn't expect. Some of them could vote for Donald Trump. I mean, we don't know that. So to insist that this was the difference for Hillary Clinton, Jill Stein, this is the spoiler, I don't think stands up to scrutiny.
I think they were saying it was a contributing factor. I think that listen, I was on Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign. We were fully aware of the mistakes and we warned about some of the mistakes in advance that Hillary Clinton were to make, like, I don't know, opening up an office in Wisconsin or being pro-fracking when we saw that the issue was resonating in states like Pennsylvania with progressives that they needed, and that only less than 1% of the jobs in Pennsylvania are, far less than 1% are fracking jobs. So we saw that there were voters that would have been inclined on certain issues, TPP, for instance, that could have swayed the election. The office in Wisconsin being the biggest one. With that being said, it was very clear that the Stein voters, as few as they were, percentage-wise, were leaning more progressive. In this situation, I think that it's probably going to be fewer, far fewer than 2016, but the margins are so small. And, Kamala Harris is pro-ceasefire, and she is definitely more progressive, I think, in history when it comes to Gaza than Joe Biden. But she's in a difficult situation in which she's part of the administration. She doesn't want to challenge Joe Biden's history and legacy, but she also needs to have her own positioning. With that being said, we cannot deny the fact that Jill Stein, went to Russia, sat at the table with Vladimir Putin and Michael Flynn for the RT dinner. This is a woman who has no experience in foreign policy, who was a Massachusetts activist, a perennial candidate, who really had very little experience in the progressive movement at all, including the Green movement. And she met with them, then decided to run for president, shocker. And now she's using right-wing consultants to spend over $100,000 alone on ballot fights to keep on the ballot in certain states with MAGA consultants. I mean, she is absolutely being propped up by the right, and it's concerning. And I think that, yes, voters should look at that. I don't think that they're passionate about Jill Stein's policies. I think that they're acting out against administration. And I would just say, think about who you're voting for, because your vote matters. I'm not going to advocate for anybody to do anything, but she is a weapon being used by the right, and that's very clear.
Well, we will see what happens with her support in just a couple of weeks. We have a lot more to cover on Rising. We'll be back right after this.